Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? College football playoff semifinals this weekend. I have some other games on the agenda to predict tonight. Last week I went 2-2 for 33 and 25 overall. In college football, you went 3-1 for a 36 and 22 overall. So you gained another game back on me. But we're going to start with the Cotton Bowl. This one is actually tomorrow night, 8:00 on ESPN. You have number 7. Florida, still ridiculous that they are number 7. After the losing the last 2 weeks of the year, but they're number 7 at 8-3, taking on number 6 Oklahoma, who is 8-2, a 3-point favorite. Over under on this one is 70 again tomorrow night at 8:00.
Who are you showing as the favorite? Oklahoma.
I'm showing Oklahoma as a 3-point favorite. Yeah,
I'm showing that it opened with Florida as a 3-point favorite, and it has since shifted 6 points to a 3-point Oklahoma spread.
That's a pretty big shift.
The over-under has also dropped.
Wow. Speaking of big shift, I ate tacos yesterday.
What do you have your over-under at? I was
70.
See, I have it currently at 68.5 after opening at 72. So you're seeing two big swings there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why people are – they're moving it like that. They're wanting the over bet, so that's a little strange. But anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I have Florida. I still have Florida winning this game. I mean, I know Oklahoma is playing some of the best football in the country here in the last few weeks of the season, but I still don't totally buy into it. Like, I don't think the Big 12 is very strong. Of course, they only played in the Big 12. They had their hiccups early. I think Florida is better than their loss to LSU. I mean, it came down to a guy throwing his shoe, to basically give LSU a victory. Dumb mistake, probably cost him a potential number 4 spot in the college football playoffs, especially with as close as they made that game with Alabama. But I think Florida's the better team here. I think they're going to cover the 3. I think they're going to win. And I without a doubt, I'm going over. These teams both score a lot of points, and I have no reason to think why they wouldn't do it in this one.
Well, I am drinking Swamphead Brewery's Big Nose IPA, Swamphead Brewery in Gainesville, Florida. And as much as that would lead you to think I was about to agree with you, it was a red herring, because I'm going the exact opposite way.
Wrong.
You're looking at a Florida team who's going to be playing without some key players, including 4 wide receivers. I think that the game with Alabama, a lot of that was a scramble to try and work their way in. I think some of that was some kinks in Alabama's game plan that, hopefully they have another one of those kinks this weekend. Doesn't help us that they had one. But anyway, I like the way Oklahoma's been finishing up the year. I think it's a totally different team than they started the year with. And normally if it was against an SEC team, I'd be all about it and say, defense wins championships, defense wins bowl games. The difference is that I don't think Florida has a defense much better than that of Oklahoma. And I think that Oklahoma's defense actually over these last 4 or 5 games has looked better than I thought they could ever play. And because of that, and because kind of just the way I'm seeing things swing here, I think I'm going to ride the trend here in Vegas. I'm going to take the Oklahoma Sooners. And with our current one, I guess, to cover 3 points, I'm going to take them to win by more than 3. I'm also going to take that over. I'm not sure why it's moving down. That has me scared a little bit, but give me the over in this one. I think this is all offense and a chance for Florida to try to make a claim for a Heisman winner.
All right, very good. Then we go to the Peach Bowl. This one kicks off quite a day in college football, New Year's Day 2021. Number 9, Georgia. They're 7-2, 7-point favorite against number 8, Cincinnati, who is 9-0. 50.5 is your over under. This one noon on ESPN. I originally, Sean, I originally had Georgia written down. But I'm changing my pick here. I think Cincinnati's going to cover. I also, don't get me wrong, I think they can pull this upset, because if there's a team in college football that loves to lose in big game situations, there may be no one greater than the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they win this game, but I think it's by some late game heroics or maybe a late game mistake by Cincinnati. But I definitely like Cincinnati to cover here. And as far as over under, I'm probably still going to go over. Like, I feel like, the Georgia's in a conference that loves to score points, and we've seen Cincinnati, the AAC, they love to do that too. So I have no reason to believe that we're going to see a containment under 50 points.
All right, so you got over and Cincinnati.
Bearcats, yes, sir.
And you have that spread at 7
for Georgia.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on a second one. I've already bet on one team that is in my opinion, a different team than the start of the year. And for me, Georgia is the exact same thing. Georgia over the last 3 games since switching quarterbacks, JT Daniels seems to be quite a difference maker. Now, their schedule hasn't been incredibly strong, and they've only played 3 games since the start of November due to postponements and such. But they've won those games very handedly. Unlike the beginning of the year, they're scoring a ton of points. They're averaging upwards of 42 to 44 points a game in that span. And they're doing it against teams that are kind of middle of the road SEC teams, but that's what's on their schedule. And I don't know that I've seen anything. I'm not trying to take anything away from Cincinnati's done. And I don't know a lot about how good they are. I feel it's one of those situations where I don't know who they've played. And they finally met somebody in Tulsa, and I believe I hit that game. Tulsa did cover that spread because Tulsa was really their first challenge in a long time, and it was challenging for them. And I think if you play that poorly against a Tulsa team, I don't see any reason why you're going to show up. Now, with it being a 1 game, I think there's definitely a chance Cincinnati shows up. Maybe there's some trickery. Maybe there's just more energy, and they do find a way to win or cover. I just, right now, looking at everything on a piece of paper and a scoreboard, I don't see it happening. I think Georgia's going to cover that 7 points, and I think it's going to be a lot of points scored, like you said. I think it's going to go over.
All right, then we go to 4 o'clock on Friday on ESPN. It is the Rose Bowl game from the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas.
Yes.
Which, first off, how much is it of a bummer that we finally get to see our Fighting Irish in a Rose Bowl, and it's not even at the Rose Bowl, which is probably one of the coolest atmospheres for college football. I mean, obviously there wouldn't be fans, but you still get the great camera shots. And, of course, it's at the site where the only other time Notre Dame has been in the college football playoff, where I think that Clemson team actually just scored again. On the Fighting Irish from 2018. But it's our number 4, Notre Dame, 10-1, taking on number 1 Alabama. They're, of course, 11-0. Oh, come on, where is it? 11-0. And they are a 20.5 point favorite in this one. Dude, like, I think we went for a walk today because it was a balmy wind chill of 28 degrees here in central Pennsylvania today, but the sun was out, so we decided to go for a breezy walk today at lunchtime. And I had noticed that the line had shifted because originally it was 17 and then now it's at 20.5. And I was like, I just want it to be close. I don't expect to win. I really don't. Would it be great if they did? Absolutely. But I don't expect it in any way, shape, or form. Do I think Notre Dame is capable if they do all the things right? Absolutely. I do. Because I think this Notre Dame team is probably the best one, probably since that 1993 team that beat Florida State. But the problem is you have to be perfect. I think I sent you and Dad this stat that Alabama is scoring 0.7 points per play. Like,
I have not seen that stat. I missed that one.
yeah, 0.7 points per play. It is the third highest of all time. I think it was the Auburn the Auburn team with Cam Newton and the Jameis Winston Florida State team had more. But like what that tells you is if you're not good at averages, is that Alabama scores so quickly that they don't have to run a lot of plays. But they've also had games where they've
grown a lot of times.
So like they score a lot. So what happens is, Notre Dame, I'm sure, is going into this, and we're not going to spend obviously as much analysis on every game. This
no
Irish, but like if you're Notre Dame, I think your game plan here is similar to what the original game plan was against Clemson, is control the clock, keep their offense off the field. But when you do that, you have to score touchdowns pretty much every time. And what we saw in Notre Dame Clemson,
you keep them off the field, and then they come on the field and score in 4 plays, and you're like, wow.
So like what happened in Notre Dame Clemson is Notre Dame opening drive looked well, resulted in a field goal. You get Clemson to turn the ball over, which they don't do a lot. You go down and you miss the field goal, and Clemson goes, great. So they come out and they scored in, I think it was 4 plays. And then Notre Dame went 3 and out, and then Clemson scored in like 3 plays. Halfway through the second quarter, Notre Dame, Clemson only had the ball for like 3.5 minutes, and it was 21-3 or something. So like, if you're gonna go with that game plan, you got to score. But the bottom line, Notre Dame has to score points, and I just don't know if Notre Dame can score enough to beat Alabama. I think Notre Dame's defense is going to make plays. They are going to force maybe more stops than Alabama's faced all year. But I don't know that Notre Dame's offense, and especially it's that offensive line versus Alabama's pass rush. I don't know if Notre Dame's offensive line, because they're a little bit banged up, is going to be good enough to give Ian Book the time to even have an opportunity to make the plays that he has to not be bad Ian Book either. So to me, I don't see it happening. And maybe this is just my last bit of pessimism in 2020, but I have Alabama winning and covering the 20.5. I think this is going to be boat race central. I just, and maybe it's just lingering effects of the ACC title. I don't have any good feelings whatsoever about this game. I just want it to be close. If Notre Dame can keep it under 2 touchdowns, I think people go, okay, Notre Dame deserved to be there. Alabama's just better. You don't want the result that I'm thinking is going to happen.
No, you don't. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I mean, Notre Dame's been blown out in these games before, but when when it comes down to resumes and strength of schedules and who they schedule, this was a weird year where you had to play a conference schedule, but you still had a top 5 team on that schedule and a couple other ranked ones, so it worked out. But with Notre Dame's usual schedule and a typical thing, how much they lose in Friday's game has no bearing on what will happen in the future. But if you want some positivity as far as this game goes, I'll see if I can give you any. I'm not going to do anything crazy like lock this like I did the ACC title game and all those kind of things. But what I will do is let you know that I think, for one thing, you're talking about the defense, and I think Notre Dame's defense is arguably the best defense Alabama will see this year. At least to this point. I think as far as SEC teams go, teams that usually have great defenses haven't shown me that. Normally, like Alabama will run into your LSUs and your Auburns and these other schools that, whether or not they beat Alabama or they at least slow them down enough to find a way to make it a dogfight. And I'm hoping that's what happens for Notre Dame. Now, like you said, you need Ian Book to play well. You need Ian Book to be able to control the clock. And one thing you got to do is, we talked about running up the middle against Clemson. You're going to run into the same problem against Alabama. If you want to try to hang on to the ball, if you want to try to beat that defensive front, if you want to try to give your offensive line help, it's going to be screen passes, options, pitches, things to get things out into space on the outside of the field. Doesn't mean it's going to work every time, but if it fails on the first 2, don't assume that it's going to keep trying to be creative. And I'm hoping that some of the stuff that they held back in that Clemson game, I think you're looking at a fairly similar defense in most facets. So some of those could still work. So it's going to be up to the defense. You have one of the best linebackers in football. And I think the defense is going to give Alabama some trouble.
Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order?
Now, if that can result in a couple of turnovers, I think special teams has got to be big. I think you got to be looking at a lot of scenarios where you're not planning on doing a lot of returns. You're trying to get to that football on any punt that they have to do. If they only punt twice, I want somebody breathing down that punt.
You want to try blocking that punt.
You want to try to make the big play, not hope for a big return. So hopefully that kind of happens. Maybe you force some field goals, which Alabama's not typically used to having to do. And maybe you can get in there and block some kicks. Notre Dame's had some success in the defensive kicking game, at least forcing some kicks to be missed. So, it's going to take some magic, I think, to win this game. But I also don't think it takes that much magic to see a way that they cover the spread. So I'm going to take the Irish to cover the 20.5. It's actually, you have a higher number than I was showing at my 18.5 or 19, whatever I got showing here.
It's kind of come down a little bit.
Right. But I've seen it as high as 21. I've seen it as low as 17. So it's moving around in there. Truth be told, it's probably a pretty good spread from a betting standpoint because it means that every time it hits the low 20s, people start betting underneath, and then they start pushing it back.
Yeah, and I think it's probably, just –
now this is also like big money betting. I mean, this is, college football playoff, your heavy money bettors, 1, 2, or 3 guys with a ton of money can swing that.
It's going to move it. It's going to move it quick.
As far as 66, I think for what I'm saying to happen, it's hard to believe that it's under 66, but I'm going to take the under mostly because we don't keep track of it. So I'm going to take the under there and hope that somehow for Notre Dame to have that chance of winning, that it's going to need to stay low, and that gives you a chance for some big plays to help. So here's hoping we got a game plan. I think my sunshine for Ian Book is you had your bad game last week. Let's hope let's not even hope. Let's understand that you have a bad game. It doesn't have to carry.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. That is the worst game Notre Dame's played all year.
One thing I noticed is like in football, and it's kind of baffling to me. Like, and I'm not saying no one ever pulls their quarterback, but in hockey, when a goalie gets shelled for 4 goals, I don't care if it's Patrick Roy, if it's Dominic Hasek, who it is, as long as it's not like a big playoff game. Like, they pull them. They're like, hey, look, you know what? Clear your head. Do what you got to do. Maybe they're having a good offensive day. We'll let somebody else get shelled for a while. Like, clear your head. Come back tomorrow. I don't think teams do that enough in football where it's like, look, man, it's not your day. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It still happens a good bit, but not near as much as goalies and high. Like, I feel like
we're seeing it with the Dolphins right now.
Yeah, just like, and I think some of it's just like you want your quarterback to have confidence in himself, but you need to kind of create a culture where it's like, look, if I pull you, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that I hate you or that I think you're not good. It just means that for that day, they got you figured out. We got to move on. You don't got to bounce back and forth all the time. You always have your starter, but just be very aware.
Notre Dame did that in 2012 between Golson and Reed. But I think also part of that too is if you have a quarterback ready to go. In Notre Dame's case, they didn't have anybody this year. They have guys that took a combined 3.
Quarterbacks are a funny breed. I think in hockey, it's just the culture of the game, and like goalies know, quarterbacks are, a lot of times they have a very soft skin for that kind of thing, and you're seeing it with my fellas in Philadelphia, like who's saying who to what, and who believes in who, and who wants to go where, and it's just kind of this whole like, man, like it's my job to win games, and like you weren't doing it, so. It's like, I just think like from a 1-game perspective, like, hey, get out of there. Even if it's like a series, like just sit down for a second, man. Get your head together. And then maybe that's the ticket. Like get them back in there after like a series. Like It's a 3 and out. It's a touchdown. Doesn't matter. Get him back in there. See what happens. But yeah, I think Ian Book has shown me this year he's different than years past, at least to an extent. And I'm hoping that what I saw in that first Clemson game is the Ian Book you see, a determined. The good news is, and I say it every time that we're an underdog, and anybody's an underdog. Sometimes it's a very strong motivator. Other times it's a gift to have nobody believe in you to win a game.
Well, yeah, I mean,
like you can't let anyone down.
First Notre Dame Clemson game, nobody thought they could win.
Yeah,
and they went out and proved they could, and you know, the wheels fell off. In
the second one, you knew they were coming. It was a little bit different mentality. I think in this type of game, when you're going against a monster like Alabama, it's just kind of like, you know, like you're not going to disappoint anybody. I feel like that's a huge advantage. You know,
like if Notre Dame gets boat raced, I expect it.
Yeah, especially with kids. Like it's like a huge thing. Like I don't want to let my mom down. I don't want to let my coach down. I don't want to let my agent down that's waiting on me at the end of this tunnel. I don't want to let anybody down. You're not going to let anybody down in this game. I don't think there's anybody that thinks that Ian Book's going to have a good game. I don't think there's very many people that think, you know, we're going to put up a lot of points. And so I think, like you said, I mean, I think even, you know, a 20-point or under, you cover a spread, you're looking pretty solid. So, you know, maybe that's their target, and you hope for some key plays. But I think we have a chance. It's not a big one, but I think we have a chance.
All right, let's hit the final three. We'll hit these fairly quick. You have the other half of the college football playoff semifinal. Number 3, Ohio State 6-0, taking on number 2, Clemson 10-1. 7.5-point favorite for the Tigers. 67 is your over/under for this one. Is on Friday at 8:00 on ESPN. Look, and this isn't a slight on Ohio State. They haven't been tested like this. They just haven't. Clemson's primed. I think the college football playoff, you could have done a best of 3 with Clemson and Alabama, and it would have been a better showing than you're going to see in these semifinals. I have Clemson. They're going to cover 7.5 easy, and I'll go over as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one, if you're an Ohio State fan and or anybody related to the program, the one pro that you have is that you haven't been tested. So, you know, maybe that's something where, like, you have parts of your playbook that haven't really been reached into. Maybe it's the fact that Clemson doesn't know how to prepare 100%. Maybe it's the fact that everybody in the world is underestimating you because of the teams you've played. It's not entirely their fault. Maybe it should have cost them a spot in the playoff, but they're here. I think there's a good chance that Ohio State impresses some people, and that spread seems small to me, which means that Vegas and the bettors and stuff like that are believing in them too. However, Trevor Lawrence no longer has to deal with a Heisman curse. COVID may have been one of the secret hidden gifts for this Clemson team. There's no Heisman curse. There's nothing like that. But Trevor Lawrence looked real great against us. I think that defensively we're better than Ohio State. I like Clemson to cover the 7.5 fairly easily. There's going to be a lot of points. It's going over, and that is my one that you can lock up.
You better lock it up. You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up. Lock it up.
All right, then we go to the Fiesta Bowl, number 25, Oregon 4-2, taking on number 10, Iowa State, who is 8-3, 4.5-point favorite. 57.5 is your over/under. This one on Saturday at 4:00 on ESPN. Oregon's only ranked because they beat
Oregon,
and they beat a not good USC team for a Pac-12 title game that Oregon shouldn't even have been in. I don't think either team is that great, but I think Iowa State is better. And I think they want to put in a good showing before next year. So I'm going to take Iowa State to cover. I think they are going to win this game, obviously. And I'll go over because if we're talking Pac-12 and Big 12, there's no chance this thing goes under 57.5. And you can go ahead.
You better lock it up. You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up. Lock it up.
I'm glad I went lock on the previous game because this was going to be my other option for a lock. I'm with you. I don't really care about why Oregon's ranked. The bottom line is at the end of this game, they're not going to be. Iowa State, not only do they have things to look forward to for next year, they have a very deep roster and a lot of players that are being looked at by the NFL. They're going to be a very sneaky team. I don't know how many of them will be first rounders, but when you look at the first 3 rounds, you're going to have your usual Alabamas, your Clemsons, your LSUs, whoever else you have. You're also going to see a lot of Iowa State Cyclones. next year and the year after getting drafted into the NFL. There's a lot of Sunday players on this team and a lot of players that are trying to sell draft stock ahead of a combine. I think they're all going to come to play. They're better than the Ducks. They've shown me that they're good enough to stay in the top 10. I'm going to take them to cover. I'm going to take the over right with you. It's hunting season, duck season for the Iowa State Cyclones. Go get them.
Then we have finally the Orange Bowl, number 5 Texas A&M, 8-1. They're a 7.5-point favorite against number 13 North Carolina, who is 8-3. 65.5 is your over under. This one Saturday night, 8:00 on ESPN. I think Texas A&M's a good football team. Their only win is their big win is against Florida. Their only loss against Alabama. They've been playing really great football as of late. But I think North Carolina is a very sneaky play. They're an offense that can score a lot of points, and if they can disrupt A&M at all, which I think they can and they will do, because they did it against Notre Dame. They disrupted Notre Dame for that first half of that game. Luckily, Notre Dame had the defense to stop North Carolina. I don't think Texas A&M does. So I think North Carolina is going to cover this 7.5. I think North Carolina actually wins this football game and just eliminates any lame argument that Texas A&M had that they should have been in the college football playoff. So I like North Carolina here in this one, and I'm definitely going to go over just because its offense is the name of the game.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I like everything North Carolina's doing. I think it's great. They're competitive. I think they have a lot of speed. They have a great offense. Defense is looking better than it has in a long time there in Chapel Hill. I've believed in A&M from the very beginning. I think the first podcast of the year we had when we did our preview show, I was high on A&M. I was worried they weren't going to be as good as Georgia or Alabama, and turns out, in my opinion, they're probably better than one of those two. So they've shown me they belong here. I think defensively they're going to show some schemes that North Carolina hasn't seen a lot of in the ACC. And A&M can score. I mean, we talk about what North Carolina can do. A&M can put up points. And A&M beat a couple pretty good teams. They beat one really good team. Unfortunately, they couldn't beat the one really, really good team. But I like A&M to win. I'm going to take them to cover also, just because it's different than you. I do think a 7 points is a fun little play to take Carolina if you're actually looking to throw a team in a parlay or something like that. Carolina could be a good one, but I think odds are A&M's going to push through here, take it by probably double digits, and I'm going to take the over right now.
Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order?